Welcome. This is a spoken reading of an exegetical and biblical-theological commentary on Genesis chapter 37. The narrative of Genesis chapter 37 stands as a critical turning point within the progressive unfolding of the divine promise plan. Following the cosmic rebellions detailed in Genesis chapters 1 through 11, namely humanity's fall in Eden, the transgression of the heavenly watchers, and the prideful centralization of power at the Tower of Babel, Yahweh judicially disinherited the nations, placing them under lesser spiritual authorities, according to Deuteronomy chapter 32, verses 8 and 9. Immediately following this fracture, God initiated his redemptive counteroffensive by calling Abraham, establishing a singular family lineage designed to mediate blessing to all the families of the earth. As the narrative transitions to the generations of Jacob, the primary threat to this localized preservation of the promised seed shifts from external pagan empires to internal familial decomposition. Through intense sibling rivalry, structural dysfunction, and severe moral failure, the chosen family fractures, paradoxically setting the stage for God's sovereign, overarching providence to preserve the covenant line through the humiliation and subsequent exaltation of Joseph. We begin the exegesis with sibling strife and the vestments of inheritance, Genesis chapter 37, verses 1 through 4. The text transitions into the final major structural block of Genesis via the phrase, "These are the records of the generations of Jacob." Rather than a dry genealogical table, this generation formula introduces a highly structured narrative focusing primarily on the interplay between Joseph and Judah as historical prototypes of the covenant's preservation. At 17 years of age, Joseph is depicted pasturing flocks with his half-brothers, the sons of Bilhah and Zilpah. The bad report Joseph brings to his father is best understood not as petty tale-bearing, but as a righteous reporting of actual ethical or functional violations committed by the brothers in the field. Jacob's flagrant favoritism toward Joseph, predicated on him being the son of his old age and the firstborn of his beloved deceased wife Rachel, exposes an unresolved multi-generational pattern of family strife. The bestowal of the multicolored tunic is an administrative declaration of inheritance. In the ancient Near Eastern kinship structure, this full-length garment signaled that the birthright was bypassing Leah's firstborn, Reuben, and being assigned to Rachel's line. Consequently, Joseph is positioned in the manager's office while his older brothers labor on the factory floor, engendering a profound relational rift where the brothers cannot bring themselves to speak peaceably to him. Next, cosmological dreams and sovereign election, verses 5 through 11. Joseph's first dream depicts agricultural sheaves binding grain in a field, with the brothers' sheaves forming a ring and bowing to his upright sheaf. The dream directly confronts the brothers' economic and familial security, as the non-inheriting sons in the ancient world were forced to rely entirely on the favor of the primary inheritor. Joseph's second dream introduces a precise cosmological fingerprint, the sun, the moon, and 11 stars bowing down to him. This imagery transcends a basic political vision of earthly thrones. In the Hebraic cognitive environment, cosmic bodies are intimately linked to the divine council and the host of heaven. Jacob immediately deciphers the architectural framework of the dream, identifying the sun and moon as the patriarchal heads and the stars as the brothers. This reinforces the prominent biblical motif of sovereign election, where a latecomer or younger son is selected for a distinct cosmic vocation over the natural firstborn. The conspiracy, the pit, and the economy of betrayal, verses 12 through 36. Sent by Jacob from Hebron to supervise his brothers at Shechem and Dothan, Joseph walks directly into a lethal conspiracy. Driven by deep-seated jealousy over his elevated status and prophetic dreams, the patriarchs plot to assassinate this dreamer in order to actively falsify the divine revelations. Reuben attempts to mitigate the guilt of innocent blood by persuading the brothers to cast Joseph alive into an empty, waterless pit, a structural symbol of chaos, death, and abandonment. Judah subsequently capitalizes on the situation by offering a commercial alternative, selling Joseph to a passing caravan of Ishmaelites and Midianites for 20 shekels of silver. The brothers justify this transaction as a political mechanism to eliminate the family heir and secure their own family's prospective futures. To cover their crime, the brothers slaughter a male goat, defiling Joseph's prized robe in blood to stage an animal attack. Upon identifying the garment, Jacob is plunged into inconsolable mourning. This structural use of a slaughtered goat and a deceptive garment to exploit a blind or grieving father directly echoes Jacob's own past deception of Isaac, demonstrating the cyclical nature of human sin. Joseph is subsequently sold down into Egypt to Potiphar, an officer of Pharaoh, entering an environment of absolute isolation and institutional bondage. New Testament appropriations of Genesis chapter 37. Later biblical writers organically connect the historical suffering, rejection, and ultimate exaltation of Joseph to the grand fulfillment of the promise plan in the person and work of Jesus Christ. In Acts chapter 7 verses 9 and 10, the martyr Stephen draws upon Genesis 37, stating that the patriarchs, becoming jealous of Joseph, sold him into Egypt, and yet God was with him. Stephen framed the betrayal of Joseph as the foundational historical archetype of Israel, rejecting the deliverers and prophets sent to them by God, a tragic trajectory that reached its historical climax in the betrayal and crucifixion of the righteous one, Jesus. In Revelation chapter 12, verse 1, the Apostle John's apocalyptic vision utilizes the exact cosmological architecture of Joseph's second dream to depict a woman clothed with the sun and the moon under her feet, and on her head a crown of 12 stars. This imagery explicitly traces back to Genesis chapter 37, verse 9, to represent the corporate identity of the covenant family of Israel, who historically endures the hostility of the serpentine dragon to bring forth the ultimate messianic seed. The New Testament also mirrors the structural presentation of Joseph as the beloved, well-pleasing son who is singled out by his father, clothed for service, and subsequently cast into the pit of humiliation and death before being elevated to the right hand of royal power to dispense the bread of life to a starving world. Theological synthesis. The historical realities of Genesis chapter 37 present a profound intersection between human depravity and the unyielding stability of God's promise plan. While the text operates within the concrete, socio-historical confines of ancient Near Eastern kinship dynamics, inheritance disputes, and fraternal betrayal, it simultaneously points forward to ultimate cosmic fulfillments. The fractured family of Jacob serves as a microcosmic mirror of a world deeply fractured by multiple spiritual and human rebellions. However, God's strange and silent providence remains the primary agent of the story, as Joseph later summarizes. What humans intend for evil, God sovereignly subverts and maps out for good to save many lives. Maintaining a strict non-supersessionist stance, the concrete preservation of these specific 12 tribes is absolutely vital to the integrity of the promise plan. This historical event directly anticipates Ezekiel chapter 37 verses 15 through 28, where the post-exilic prophetic sign act of joining the two sticks of Judah and Joseph or Ephraim guarantees the literal future reunification and restoration of the physical tribes of Israel under one Davidic shepherd. Ultimately, the concrete preservation of Jacob's line in Genesis chapter 37 safeguards the genealogy of the Messiah, ensuring the realization of the ultimate cosmic reality depicted in Revelation chapter 7, verse 9, where the temporary disinheritance of the nations at Babel is permanently reversed, and a multi-ethnic family from every nation, tribe, and tongue is eternally gathered into the sacred space of the living God.